Welcome back to the NWR Virtual Healthcare Conference for 2025. Our first presentation to kick off day two is from Althea Group Holdings, ticker AGH, and we're joined by CEO and Managing Director Joshua Fegan. Althea is involved in the manufacturing, sales and distribution of cannabis-based medicines and recreational cannabis products, services these sectors via two business units: Peak Processing Solutions Unit, which is recreational cannabis business producing legal cannabis products purchased by adult consumers in retail stores, and then Althea, the company's pharmaceutical business. Just a reminder on questions, if you have one you'd like to submit, please do that using the Q&A option within Zoom, and we'll get to those at the end. But I'll hand it over to Joshua for his presentation first.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending. Yes, my name's Josh Fegan. I am the CEO of Althea Group Holdings, and I'd like to thank you to NWR for having me this morning. So just a quick deck to go through this morning and then a bit of a Q&A. This is just a bit of a corporate snapshot. I believe this deck will be uploaded to the ASX platform afterwards, so I'll leave the more mundane stuff to that. Correct. Althea Group Holdings is essentially two separate and distinct businesses. Our legacy business, which people might have heard of, we were the second supplier of medicinal cannabis in Australia. That business started servicing patients in 2018 with the sale and distribution of our cannabis-based medicines. It's now serviced well over 70,000 patients across Australia and the UK. But what we really wanted to spend a lot of time talking about today is our business called Peak Processing Solutions, which is a contract developer and manufacturer of THC beverages. And we wanted to spend quite a bit of time on the exciting developments that particular category is making in terms of inroads, particularly in North America. Just touching base on a few historical things. AGH has been a public company for a while now. Again, just off the back of that Althea business, we've obviously been through a lot. The company itself was a startup. The cannabis industry was entirely new, never been done before. So, you know, our history over the last 3 or 4 years in particular has been very much about speculating, about building a business. There's been a degree of trial and error in that. You know, there's no typical blueprint for success, but it allowed us to become a real leader in the space. Things have gotten a little bit more challenging in that arena, which I'll talk about a bit later in this presentation. But I just wanted to focus on that philosophy. Being a new business in a new industry, everything is about investment in growth, and actually building a business that does have a strong revenue base and customers and all of the good stuff that comes with it. So we've hit a point now in our journey where that's about turning into profitability, taking that strong base of revenue that we have, and monetizing it and returning profit to shareholders is obviously the name of the game, particularly in this market. So I'm really happy to say that the recent half result was our best financially. We are edging more and more closely to an operating profit, as demonstrated by the 1.5 million P&L loss in that first half, compared to an underlying loss of 9 million in the prior corresponding period. So, you know, obviously significant and really on the nice edge of that profitability piece. We have spoken publicly about the decline in sales in our legacy business, Althea. Again, I'll talk about that a little bit later. But what we really wanted to focus on was the strong growth in our recreational cannabis business, which is Peak Processing Solutions. That's up 58% over the prior corresponding period and doing nicely. We'll touch on the expansion of Peak Processing Solutions from Canada into the US today. And that is a big part of our story around our recent funding securement, which was not just to shore up our balance sheet, but to make sure that we have what we need to really transform this business and really pursue an exciting opportunity, which we'll get to quite shortly. The pharmaceutical business, Althea, is obviously very important to us still. We've put in a lot of work into a restructure and right-sizing process that even as the sales aren't quite where they've been before, is actually producing better results at an EBITDA level than it has before, which is quite pleasing. And we do have a great setup in Australia and the UK for that business moving forward. We've strengthened the board recently with the appointment of a brand new chairman in Vaughan Webber. We've had some rotation with non-executive directors, which I think has been really healthy, with a gentleman called Matt Adams coming on board in the last 6 weeks. And we also have a brand new company secretary in Adam Gallagher. So the board and corporate side of things is obviously really important to us, and we just wanted to demonstrate that it is an area that we've strengthened dramatically, particularly in the last 3 or 4 months. Financial turnaround. So just digging into that, what's it look like? Reporting those half-year results, readers will see that the year before we had a 15.1 million statutory loss, which again has been reduced down to 1.5. I mentioned before, on an underlying basis, once you take out an impairment that we had, it is still a really, really positive result, going from a 9 million underlying loss to 1.5 million. Again, that was really driven off the back of Peak Processing Solutions and the sales that we're seeing in THC beverages, up to $8.9 million for the last half, a really healthy 58% to prior corresponding period. That really sets us up, positions us for long-term profitability. We know that we've been able to rejuvenate the business. We've been able to reinvent ourselves multiple times over the years. And what I want to do today is really talk about our identity, our purpose, because all of this jostling, all of this, understanding the marketplace and who we really are, has been super important to get us to where we are today. And just, finishing up on a couple of big points, which is really the funding, $6 million secured, which is really going to drive what we're going to talk about next forward. And hoping to really boost those revenue numbers as well and finish the financial year off strongly, and then look for some really, really healthy growth in the THC beverage business in particular through FY26 and beyond. So just really honing in on Peak Processing Solutions. What is it? What does it do? So I mentioned before that Peak is founded in Canada. So in 2021, we were licensed by Health Canada to start manufacturing what were known as recreational cannabis products. I think it's kind of moved beyond that, and I'll get to that. But basically, Peak is a contract developer and manufacturer of THC beverages. So we are a one-stop solution for brands that are looking and investing and building a brand in that particular sector, which, by the way, is the fastest growing in Canada. So it's quite exciting to see that ready-to-drinks, just like they've performed really well in alcohol, really are the future of cannabis as well. As we sort of get through the legacy users of things like dried flower and vapes, and we really crack open a new consumer base that might not be regular cannabis users, might have never had it before, and are really just excited as THC as an ingredient. Industry expertise is second to none. We've produced well over 13 million THC beverages in Canada, so no one has the experience in production like we do. That comes with the ability to navigate very complex regulations. Health Canada is Canada's equivalent of the Therapeutic Goods Administration. So everything we do has to be gold standard. And that is now embedded in our DNA. And everything that we do on this side of the business is as quality as it would be on pharmaceuticals, the other side. We do have purpose-built infrastructure. I'll talk a bit more about our patent pending emulsion, our cannabis ingredient, which has been really important to what we've been able to achieve and really is the backbone of our future in developing and mass producing beverages. We are trusted by leading brands. Some of the brands I'll show you in a minute are the biggest in the game, and are doing really well and have obviously nurtured the marketplace to maturity along with Peak and partnering with us. And we definitely have a vision for market leadership. The cannabis industry has become extremely genericized. There's not many businesses that have true hardcore barriers to entry. Peak Processing Solutions certainly has. But what is a THC beverage? A THC beverage on a shelf would just look like, excuse me, any other ready to drink product. White Claw, hard solo, plenty of cocktails in a can that you can imagine. And this looks and feels very similar to that. So when we talk about THC beverages, the key difference between that and alcohol is actually just one ingredient, and that is tetrahydrocannabinol, which is THC. Like alcohol, as an ingredient, it is intoxicating. However, we really see it as an alternative to alcohol because it has a lot of lifestyle and health benefits. And that's what we're talking about today, healthcare. What does that look like? Reduced toxicity. So THC as an ingredient in a beverage is not going to harm your body the same way that alcohol does, especially with long-term use, things like liver disease, coronary, and all that sort of stuff, which is not great and a side effect of alcohol use. The second thing is no hangovers. Everyone leads a more and more active lifestyle these days. No one wants to feel too dusty and get up for work and all that sort of stuff. THC beverages offer that wind down experience that most people are chasing at the end of a really long day, but you wake up fresh as a daisy. Low calories, everyone knows that health comes number one these days, so everyone is looking for low sugar or no sugar alternatives, and watching their calorie intake pretty closely. A lot of the drinks that we've formulated for our brand partners, which by the way is well over 200 formulations that we've produced as Peak, whether it's a seltzer, a cola, a fruit juice, a water-based drink. We've done plenty that have low to no sugar whatsoever and very low in calories as well. So the next point, social alternative, that's a big thing because THC beverages aren't something that's like, oh, I'll take it, I might be knocked out and, go real quiet for a few hours. It's actually not like that. Like alcohol in moderation, THC beverages are going to be a very sociable thing and sessional. You can drink multiple of these drinks, have that relaxed or good time that you're looking for, depending on the potency of the THC in the product, and be able to go home and chill out and wake up like nothing ever happened, which obviously you can't do with too many beers under your belt. Precise dosing, just going off the back of what I spoke about, like alcohol and ABV, which is the percentage of alcohol within any serving, that can chop and change in THC beverages as well. So most drinks that are available on the market at the moment in both Canada and I'll talk about the US, are generally somewhere between 2.5 milligrams of THC and 10 milligrams of THC per can. I'll suggest that the equivalency factor for me, in any case, 1 5 milligram THC beverage, whether that's a seltzer or a cola, doesn't really matter, would probably be the equivalent feeling of about 2 or 3 beers. The good thing about THC as well, yes, it's intoxicating, but there's no fueled violence. Alcohol obviously does create some of that within the community. No such thing in THC beverages. It really is quite a friendly product like that. Customizable effects. What that refers to is you can actually calculate based on the potency of a THC beverage how long that intoxication might last physiologically. So, for example, onset, starting to feel the THC affect you might take 15 to 20 minutes, not too dissimilar to a pint of beer. But, depending on actually how it's formulated, you might get an offset in an hour or so. So it's not like you're going to have a THC beverage and have those experiences for 8, 9 hours. It's not like that. It can be controlled, which is quite cool too. And cannabis is less addictive than caffeine, so there is real no worry around addiction like there is with alcohol and other drugs. So that kind of just recaps what a THC beverage actually looks like and why we're so excited about it and more so consumers are. Don't expect too many people to know these brands other than probably Boston Beer Company, which is behind Samuel Adams, Truly Hard Seltzer, and one of the biggest selling alcohol beverages in the US at the moment in Twisted Hard Tea, which are doing very, very well. So those guys know how to build brands in the alcohol space and definitely diverting into THC as well. That's a big thing in alcohol at the moment. Everyone are seeing sales soften, so people are looking for alternatives. Global market growth and projections. This is a big thing. We do see a global market for THC beverages. Right now, our focus is Canada, where we grew up and learned to play our trade, and over the border into the US, which is the biggest consumer market on the planet. We do have some pretty big numbers there, but what we have to understand is in-home alcohol, that's just in-home alcohol, in the US is a $265 billion per annum industry. All we have to do is take a good percentage of consumers of alcohol, change their behavior, get them to try and then repeat buy THC beverages, and those numbers become very, very realistic. Non-alcohol put a dent in alcohol sales, and if you ask me, non-alcohol's a bit of a waste of time. You're just giving up calories and things like that for no reason. Whereas people are still looking for a buzz. They are still looking to enjoy themselves. And you can fall back on THC beverages the same way you can on alcohol, and it's much better for you. So we know that the sands are shifting. There is a lot of consumer preference towards THC. People might have heard of the concept Californian sober, which means that you abstain from alcohol, but you will have THC in some variety. And a lot of that is moving towards beverages because it's just so easy. Sustainability and ethical practices, I think that's important. All our products are made in aluminium cans, which are obviously very good for the environment in terms of recycling compared to plastics and that type of thing. Technological advancements, our biggest thing was research and developing the main ingredient, which is THC, and the way that that actually integrates with the liquid and the product is really important. Because if you have a poor cannabis ingredient, the outcome of the drink is going to be terrible. It's going to taste like crap. It's probably not going to be efficacious. In other words, the THC isn't going to do anything anyway. Leads to a whole bunch of problems you don't want. So Peak, our business, actually research and develop its own patent pending emulsion, which we call Envision is the trade name. And that's why it is such an important piece of IP for us, because it powers every single beverage we make. It has the ability to be clear. So if you wanted a clear beverage for whatever reason, it might even be a regulatory thing. If you pour your drink into a glass out of the can, it'll still look good, taste good, mixes with everything. It's a pretty impressive platform of technology. Legalization and accessibility. Everything's freeing up in this THC beverage space. It's nationally available across the US and Canada, and will probably expand into other countries as it becomes more and more tolerated and big in those markets. We kind of touched on the type of consumers that are buying THC beverages at the moment. But when these things are literally on a shelf next to wine and craft beer, sometimes that's a good thing because mum might be going in to look for a bottle of wine, as you do after you put the kids down and had a long day, and right there in front of you is a THC beverage. Maybe I'll try that, and it grows legs from there for a lot of the reasons that we just discussed. But make no mistake about it, the United States is such a huge opportunity, and this isn't some moonshot. We've paid our dues in Canada. We knew that America was the end game for us. It was the big target market that we wanted to get to, and in a way, Canada was a bit of a launching pad, bit of a test bed for that. Canada will still do really well in its own right. It just has slightly different regulations that aren't as fast moving as it is in the US, and certainly don't have the population and the market size that the United States has. Production and distribution expansion. We have a vertically integrated facility in Canada just based on the Health Canada legislation. Everything has to be done under the one roof. Little bit different in America, where we have our emulsion production and a production site in Florida. And we actually do have multiple production points throughout the country as well. We operate in something that's very akin to the Coca-Cola system, where our secret formulation, which is our emulsion plus the base, is actually able to be sent geographically across the country, and the actual canning of the finished product can be done at multiple peak approved locations. We successfully launched 2 brands, a seltzer range called Mallow and a cola range called Cloud Cola. Our first customer in the US was actually a joint venture that we've completed with a company called Flora Growth, that did a lot of lifestyle cannabis products in the US. They have about 250,000 people on their online database. They really wanted to get into beverages, and we were kind of like-minded in that we wanted, to really prove our chops in production. And this was a good early partnership because they focus on sales and marketing, which are, 2 sides of the coin. Of course, we do want to bring in our more mature Canadian customers into the US, and those conversations are certainly taking place at the moment, which is really exciting. So that infrastructure will start paying dividends if it hasn't already. The rest is just sort of, basic information that we might have touched on a little bit earlier. Just racing through this to try and get a bit of Q&A going. Althea, the legacy business, has definitely had its challenges. Again, we were one of the first operators in the Australian market, and one of the first in the UK and other parts of Europe as well. Extremely challenging times in medical cannabis, unfortunately. We set ourselves up to be very pharmaceutical in our approach and treat this like a genuine drug to compete with other licensed medicines like opioids for pain and that type of thing. Unfortunately, the TGA in particular fell asleep at the wheel. There's a lot of bad actors doing some crazy things, which has made the marketplace quite challenging. Doctors getting paid, lots of patients that probably aren't getting consultations and are being prescribed, flour and vapes and gummies of all things. So it's kind of become a bit more of that Californian model, which is okay, but there's just a lot of competitors. When we were the market leader, there was about a dozen brands. This is only 2 or 3 years ago. There would be easily in excess of 150 brands now and thousands of products, and they're all very similar. So it is going to go through a bit of a consolidation period, the Althea business. But like I said in the beginning, what's different to us about actual cannabis companies, because we're really not anymore, we're a fast-moving consumer goods business, is that we have high barriers to entry when it comes to making THC beverages that are super duper complicated, not like formulating gummies, which is, just gelatin and sugar, and some THC isolate and things like that. So that business we have, obviously worked really hard to still make it a valuable contributor to the group overall, and that turnaround is well underway. But yes, it is no longer our core business. I think we can all agree that the opportunity is the US, and things that we also want to do with the existing business in Canada are just far greater opportunities for shareholders. And in this market, in this economy, we need to be singularly focused and make sure that we're getting everything out of it, every bang for buck that we possibly can. So that's the end of the presentation, but I believe, Matt and or Mel from NWR might have some questions.
No worries. Thanks very much for that, Josh. We'll get into the questions. We've only got about 5 minutes, so I'll try and make them pretty quick fire. Just a couple from the audience. So, do you foresee issues penetrating the US with the current trade war and anti-Canada rhetoric from the US?
Good question, but the answer is no. So the products themselves have to be made in both countries respectively. So there is no border crossing at all. So it's not like we're looking at tariffs or anything like that. How we service Canada is from products we make in Canada. How we service the US market is from product that is actually made in the US.
Thank you. Bit of a two-pronged question. So, part one, how do consumers in Canada and the US purchase the product? And would it potentially be a mainstream product down the road, i.e., supermarkets and bottle shops?
Yeah, it is in America. Yeah. So the Dan Murphy's equivalent in the US is a liquor chain called Total Wine and More. They've been ranging THC beverages for about 6 or 7 months now. In fact, those two brands that we produce under the JV are in those stores as well, in multiple states. I think they did something ridiculous like 80 million Australian dollars in 2 months towards the end of last year. So they're now starting to take the category extremely seriously, which is great. There's another big liquor chain called ABC Liquor that we've just got our products picked up by their buyers as well. So it is very much a mainstream product in the US and very much a fast-moving consumer good in liquor stores, and it can be sold in petrol stations and things like that as well. Canada's a little bit different. The drinks are still sold in dispensaries, which are legal retail stores. However, the LCBO, which run all the liquor shops in Canada, are talking about a pilot trial at multiple locations where THC beverages will actually live next to beer and wine.
Thank you. And the second part to that was, what is the average price of a can in both countries?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a six-pack of 5 milligram beverages in the US is about 14.99, so about $15. In Canada, it's a bit more expensive just in the difference in regulations and how they're sold. It's about $6 or $7 Canadian on average for a can. So not too dissimilar to beer and RTDs, which quite pricey these days.
Thank you. Do you have partnerships with any major beverage brands or distributors to help scale production or reach?
Yeah, so the biggest alcohol company that we work with, Boston Beer, have obviously done a lot of work and seeding this as a product type for them in Canada. They have amazing distribution contacts, obviously being a rather large company. So in the US in particular, it's a three-tier system where you have the manufacturer, you have licensed distributors, who essentially wholesale the products to licensed retailers. Those connections, those contacts are the reason why ultimately big alcohol will win in the THC space. And we aren't there to be competitive on brands. We want to be the largest manufacturer of cannabis drinks, of THC beverages. And the reason why that is because that's where all our IQ is, and they're very difficult to make. You can't just fire up a cider or a microbrewery line that was doing craft beer yesterday and produce really good quality THC beverages. It's just not possible. So these guys need to outsource manufacturing. And I think one day, the bigger fish are going to start sucking up some of that as well to protect their patch.
Thank you. And someone's asked, what's the current production capacity of peak processing solutions? Can it scale to meet demand? And is there plans to invest in additional facilities or technology on this front?
Yeah, good question. Canada being vertically integrated, our per annum capacity is about 12 million units, 12 million cans. We're currently at about 30%. So we have a lot of room to grow in Canada, which is good. And there'll be efficiencies that we can gain to improve margins when that scale starts to get larger and larger. In the US, a few of the potential customers have asked me that same question, what's your capacity? And even to the bigger ones, my answer is a lot more than you can give us. It's huge in the US just based on the difference in the regulatory environment.
Very good. That's all we've got time for. Unfortunately, there is a few questions there which I'll send through to you, Josh, and you can go back to those people separately. But thanks very much for your time today and to everyone for joining.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you everyone for your time.
Next up, we have Imricor, who will start in about 5 minutes from now. So I hope some of you can join us there. Thank you.